What were we doing on Pesach regarding Shiur?
Shiur, like it's quite nice to be. I don't know. They want to be Shimon Chamara, so no.
Do you like that or do you not like that?
No, I wouldn't mind speaking there actually. Very, very good turnouts usually. Let's say it's live. Yeah, it is live now. We're live.
No, you have to be careful what you say.
Yes.
Yeah, don't bash this much.
But thank you. Got a lot to do. Let's get moving. Got interesting things. There's so much in this stuff. I'm just going to do it in like half. I don't know. We'll finish in the Sims Motzei Shabbos. Next Motzei Shabbos we'll finish in the Sechta.
Sims on Sunday, man.
Yeah, Sims Motzei Sunday. I say Sunday night.
So
we have a few days break or?
No. Monday we're starting Shkolim. We're starting Shkolim a day early, but we're not doing the night of Dikas Chometz this year.
Last year you uploaded it.
That were 2 daf ahead because of the fact that one night we missed because of the Sim.
Yeah. And Shkolim.
And the Shkolim will do.
Because Chometz night.
Yeah, so we're exactly on time.
We can do it after Seder.
Right, let's get going. It's got interesting things to do. So, we after that Kuf Yud Gimel on Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Tonahu Yosef. The Gemara now tells us a list of names of people who the names are the same persons. The Gemara says like this: Tono, we have a Beis. Hu Yosef ish Hutzal, Hu Yosef Hababli, Hu Isi ben Guarye, Hu Isi ben Yehuda, Hu Isi ben Gamliel, Hu Isi ben Mahalem, Uma Shmoy Isi ben Akav Yeshmoy. That's the end of that Gemara. The Gemara just said 8 names, all the same. I think it's 8. The point is, the shaila is, why did he have so many names? And there are basically 2 mahalachim in the Rishonim. One mahalach is because he was forced to flee from the Romans and he came up with new names all the time. Others, his father was a very, very big tzaddik, so the father's name had many different titles, each one reflecting another aspect of greatness of his father. New similar Gemara. Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Tabla, Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Chaklo, Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yilo. Yitzchak ben Tabla, Yitzchak ben Chaklo, Yitzchak ben Yilo is all the same person. Another Gemara. Tov Kiv Daled Amud Aleph. Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Achad de Shmaitza. Hu Rabbi Yitzchak ben Pinchas da Agadato. Whenever we have Rabbi Yitzchak who's saying ha'alocha, then it's Rabbi Yitzchak ben Achad. Whenever we say Rabbi Yitzchak saying a Divrei Agadata, it's Rabbi Yitzchak ben Pinchas, right? So if you ever have a Yitzchak in Agadata, who is it? Rabbi Yitzchak ben Pinchas. And Haloch is Yitzchak ben Achad. V'simonich, Shimu no Achai v'Rei. Shimu is Shmaitza, is Halocha. Achai sounds a little bit like Acha, Yitzchak ben Achad. So therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Achad is the one who heard. So whenever it's Shmaitza, it's Rabbi Yitzchak ben Achad. So that's a very important way to remember. If it's Rabbi Yitzchak ben Acha or Rabbi Yitzchak ben Pinchas. My son learns Vom Levi once every 2 weeks. He told me this Thursday night, it was late night, Vom Levi said to him Shtickle Torah, and he spent 10 minutes quarter of an hour looking up who was one where he got the Shtickle Torah from. So my son said to me, it's late, like, why is it so necessary? He said, is it small in your eyes? Maybe you got to know who said it. The Gemara over here establishes who says it. The Gemara over here says a bit of musa, a bit of behavior. We're up to Kuf Yud 4 lines from the top. Ochil botzer v'shei betzel. The Gemara is using this fact that the words sound similar. Botzer means onions. V'shei betzel, sit in the shade. Don't eat fattened chickens and ducks. And you should be constantly unhappy and chasing. Better to have a simple life, but a happy one with simple pleasures than the lavish lifestyles. And what happens is your heart is constantly unhappy because you can't afford it and you're constantly stressed. And I think that's a shochet pratis today, this afternoon, learning Hilchos Pesach. And I saw, the Tam to Vishchazub there's like, it's a very heintige sefer, so I'm not saying you should be allowed this, like, Mishnah, but it's interesting halacha like this. Somebody wrote to him as follows, asked him as following question. My father's father always uses onions for karpas, always. But my wife, potatoes. So what should I do? It's a very funny shaila person, like you do whichever one you prefer. But people like to ask everything. Oh, not a terrible thing to ask. He said to him, of course, minhagim go after father. But you have an issue, and that is like this. The onions, it's a big shaila what bracha you're to make. Which onions did they use? Raw onions. Raw onions, couldn't Mishnah Bura, they only make shahakal. And you have to make very clear Adam on karpas because you want to be moitzi the more. Oh, what about your father's father? He probably did it at a time when people used to eat raw onions as a normal thing before the Mishnah Bura even came out. But now that we have a Mishnah Bura that says that raw onions is shahakal, is besupuk, you have to use potatoes. So, do anybody use onions for karpas? Have I spoiled anybody say the night? Use radishes. Okay. But the ancient thing is, why did I say so shachbatis? Is because Tesis in Brachas brings this Gemara and says, but when it means eat onions, it doesn't mean raw onions, because that's not good. But rather you should eat cooked onions. When you're ready to eat them, but that's not the main message of the Gemara. The main message of the Gemara is what? That better eat cheap food and live b'tzeil in the shadow rather than to have a fatty meal and constantly be unhappy. More carries on. Have less than what you need to eat and drink. That means minimize eating and drinking. And put money into your house. Oh, if you ever buy a house, I remember once went to the Rachva, discussed with him which house to buy. And he said to me that with guarding most things, you should not extend yourself. You should try and carry as much as possible. Guarding a property, there's often if people live in a very, very squash, better to live further out to try to solve for the first switch. Better to live somewhere where it's cheaper and small garden and everything else. But you have to have a big house because what happens is the children get crowded on each other and it's very, very difficult. It's not such a healthy thing. The Beis, the Rabbi says, minimize food and drink, but add it to your house. It is ancient. Ben Yehuda writes, obvious for what? It's referring to your true home. Your true home is the chuppah which you have in Elam Haba. So minimize your gashmis in this world and then invest in your property, your real property, the one which you're going to live in. Also, they used to say the following moshel in Ma'arav in Eretz. The ochil alisa, those who eat the fatty tail, toshi ba'alisa, they have to hide in the upstairs because they're always scared of people, creditors, and things like that. We're trying to, it's a play on words as well because it's similar words. Alisa is the fatty tail, and alisa is the upstairs. The ochil kalkuli, those who eat cheap vegetables, akalkul de masa shochim, they can sleep in the open areas of the city. Meaning, if you live a cheap lifestyle, you're not constantly stressed about creditors. And then what happens is, what can you do? You can sleep wherever you want without being concerned that maybe people will be chasing after you. So if you live in a very, very expensive lifestyle, it's very hard. If you live a cheap lifestyle, it's much, much easier. Says the Mishnah. We're starting now, Mamish, the Seder night, they pour Kaddish, they pour for him the first cup of wine. And here, the Rabbi and others say, Moz Kuloi, what would you learn from that halacha? Very good. Somebody else should put him. And he says, is it only for the Balabayis or everybody? Everybody should have something else. I pour for you, you pour for me. But the main thing is the Balabayis. Very good. Moz Kuloi Koisvisham, they pour for him the first cup. The truth is, from here to the next Mishnah, I do not need to do with you. We did it in Brachas, and we did mamish word for word the Gemara in Brachas. So it should be literally etched in your brains, on your fridge. But we'll do it because it's good to do Chazar 101 times in Chazar. First make a bracha on the day that's Kiddush, and then you say Baruch Agafen. First make a bracha and then you make a bracha on the day, then you make Kiddush. So which one comes first? We pass on what? Geffen first, and then we say Kiddush. That's how we do every single Kiddush. Abdullah, we always say Geffen first. What are the things which this is part of a very long brayso which Gemara Brachas brings, and this is only a small chelik of it. First make a bracha on the day, and they give two reasons to back it up. Why? One reason is because first, why do we have Kiddush? because it's Shabbos, because it's Yom Tov, because it's Pesach. So what's the essential thing over here? The Kiddush, the day. Afterwards, make a boch on the wine. The wine only came because of the Pesach. Another reason, the day came before the wine. When do you make Kiddush? Usually make Kiddush after Nacht, right? Usually make Kiddush after Nacht. If that's the case, what came first? First the Kiddush of the day, and then the wine. So if it makes more sense, make a bracha first on the wine, on the day, then on the wine. It's only because of wine that you're saying Kiddush. If you had no wine, would you be able to say Kiddush? No. So it's only because you have wine that you say Kiddush, and therefore the wine is more important. Dovach, another reason. It's a target. Whatever is more important comes first. Whatever is more common comes first, and therefore we do Tadir first. Those who did Zvachim will remember. Why is Tadir Kodim? Where do we know it from the Torah? You should bring the common Ashelel as a break, Ashelel as a Tomid. That first bring the common Tomid, Ashelel as a Tomid, because it comes every day. The reason that it comes first is because it comes every day. Okay. The Hilchas, so here I saw when I spoke from the Tzlach, small point, that Beis Shammai gave 2 reasons, Beis Hillel gave 2 reasons. Why is the Gemara only disturbed by Beis Hillel's second reason, not by Beis Shammai? And he says because Beis Hillel used the word Dova Acham. Dova Acham means another idea, another angle. Beis Shammai just say 2 reasons, fine. Don't give 2 reasons, fine. But why do you have to say Dova Acham? That you Beis Shammai have 2 reasons, and I only have 1. It's also 2. And therefore, Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, you think that you've got 2 reasons and we've only got 1. We'll find you a second reason. The many Rishonim ask the question, how can you say that without wine you don't say Kiddush? You can't make Kiddush without wine if you've got matzah. It disturbs them that. The Rashbam says the simple answer is because bread, matzah, is in place of wine. So therefore, again, if not for having something, you won't be able to make Kiddush. You can't make Kiddush on nothing. But others shouldn't say, other Baalachim, some say it's a right from over here, that you cannot make Kiddush on wine. Tesis uses this as a right that you can't make Kiddush on wine. Because Moses says if you don't have wine, you can't make Kiddush. It's a right that you have to have wine. And I said, the Rashbam says it's not a right because matzah is in place of the wine. So it's as if you have to have something to make Kiddush on. The halacha kedib Beis Hillel. The halacha is like Beis Hillel. If it were pshita, obviously, there are nothing basket. There's a basket that came out. The halacha is like Beis Hillel. Ibo say the basket. This Beis was written before the basket. Rabbi Shua holds we do not hold like basket. Why? Where did Rabbi Shua say we don't hold like the basket? Story Rabbi Lezer with Avon. So this is disturbed that why do we? The Gemara says Allah is like Beis Hillel. Why? Because the basket came out. But again, we said by Rabbi Lezer that we don't hold of a basket. So why over here do we say that we do hold of the basket when normally we don't hold of a basket?
They didn't ask for. They didn't ask.
Therefore, that's more powerful. Yeah, maybe that's the second Teresatus. That's the second Teresatus. Again, that the Gemara says we don't listen to Baskel. Yet we know B'Sham B'Sil passed like B'Sil. Why do we listen to B'Sil? Because Baskel came out. But we don't listen to Baskel. Maybe, but what Spence says, I'll just say this. This one answer is that Beis Hillel were the Voiv. So Voiv always go Acher Rabbim. Only Beis Shammai were cleverer. So therefore the question was to take that into consideration. So the Baskel took us back to what we would have originally thought anyway because of Acher Rabbim Natos. Mashenkin Rabbi Lezer was a Yochid K'neged Rabbim. We don't listen to Baskel Yochid K'neged Rabbim. Then Tesis says another answer, interesting answer. Tesis says that the Baskel came l'chvoid Rabbi Lezer, to honor him. And therefore since it came l'chvoid Rabbi Lezer, that's what we can't listen to. But a normal Baskel we would listen. Maybe that's a bit like, there Rabbi Lezer said, let Baskel prove my point. Oh, let Baskel prove my point. Well, let's just see. What did Baskel really say? So Baskel only said it to prove his point, but not because Baskel really held it. It was the Kilu HaKadosh who was listening to Rabbi Lezer. That is the 2 points. Okay, nice. We pass like this. Still the what? We say first the wine, then so we're up to Kaddish. And now we're going straight to Karpas. We're going to miss out Urchatz. The Gemara mentions Urchatz later. What's Karpas? We dip in a piece of potato, vegetable, any of it, it doesn't have to be potato, could be radish, any vegetable into salt water. Then what's the reason? I do dip. The main reason, which the Gemara gives, the main reason, it's many Muslim. The main reason is Because to get the children interested and excited and to start wondering. So I want to say, the other reasons given, that karpas is an appetizer. So a very, very beautiful word. That chevus, it shows wealth, also tears of the till of the soul. So very, very nice word. Unbelievable. What's an appetizer? An appetizer, something's come to me and you don't have an appetite. You're very worried about something. What? To whet your appetite. You're very worried, you're tired, you're in bad mood, you can't eat. You have an appetizer, awakens an appetite. Really, we should all have a huge appetite for Mashiach to come. The problem is that we've become a bit despondent. Mashiach hasn't come for so long, so we've lost our appetite. We don't yearn for it the same way. The whole Leila Seder is mechazik the emunah that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Just like Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, so too He'll bring us to Yerushalayim. So the whole Seder is to whet our appetite, that we should get excited about Mashiach. And he says more than that, the Shem Shmuel adds this, that in fact the Shabbat who took us out of Mitzrayim did that to us. He came to Kaisel, said to us, it's time to come out of Mitzrayim. What's the next thing that happened? All went worse. So why? The answer is that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to waken up in us the hope for Geula. Because only when we hope for Geula will Mashiach come. Only when we hope for Geula. Okay. Now the next sugya is very busy with one problematic thing. What happens if a person doesn't have any vegetables? Now everybody's going to have some vegetable. Which vegetable is everybody going to have? Mole. So the question is a very lot about using mole for karpas. That is the main. But really, very hard. The Gemara does this a very lot. In fact, like really, the main topic is karpas. But what the Gemara does is the Gemara learns most of the halachas about the mole of karpas, and from there you learn some of the halachas of karpas. Okay, if you look on up, they bring him. So according to Tesis, they bring an actual table. Others say different things. They bring in front of him food. Metabel bechazeres. He dips with chazeres. Chazeres is lettuce. Why is he dipping with the lettuce? So the Rashbam says, we're talking about that he doesn't have anything else. That if he's only got you dip with lettuce. But obviously it would be better if you didn't have lettuce, you do chazeres. Now, the word metabel, the Gemara will say, it's not necessarily dipping in salt water, because that's only a Gemara says. Metabel, in the olden days, since everything they used to eat, they used to dip on things. Metabel is just a way of eating. So we had metabel b'nei ma'ayim. When you would gnash at something, say metabel. So you have a little bit of chazeres. There's machlokes yeshinim shudal kazayis, so less than the kazayis. We'll discuss maybe with Hashem forget chance. Ad shmagela paper sapas. The way Rashbam explains, and into Rashi as well. You eat this lettuce before the lettuce that you're going to eat it later, which will enhance the matzah. That means eat this one besides for the lettuce you're going to eat later. The Ran says from here we see, by the way, that if you've got a choice of more, you should always use lettuce, because it automatically assumes that you'll have chazeres. Why not a different kind? We had all shin, we had different kinds of lettuces, different kinds of more. Chazeres is the main one. So before you're going to eat the chazeres, which is with the matzah, eat this chazeres. Okay, some say prepare sapas is referring to the matzah itself. Right. Says the Gemara. It says the Mishnah. If you are fond of matzah, then they bring matzah, v'chazeres amol, v'chavoises, which they have shinin and 2 cooked foods. Question is, why they bring it to him now? So Tesis says that what happens is like this: you did kaddish, which that's the Mishnah. All chats the Gemara is going to mention, and karpas, and then yachaz is the Gemara doesn't mention. We'll see it comes into it, and then you've got magid. Before magid, you take the table, take everything off the table. And then you put it back onto the table. If you remember, before the man is standing, you're supposed to take the whole car off the table. And every year you make a whole spiel out of it. You take the car off, and all the children say to you, why take it off the car off the table? You say to them, because we're not yet ready to eat, because we're going to discuss it Siyas B'Tzayim. You take the car off the table, so this is why if you're fond of, they have to bring it back on, because they took it off to make the questions. Okay. Matzah v'chazeres v'charosos shtei tavshilin and 2 cooked foods. It's not a mitzvah. The Gemara will discuss if it's not a mitzvah, why do we do it? But when a mitzvah, it is a mitzvah. The Gemara will discuss that as well. But Beis Hamikdash, in front of Gufa Shel Pesach, you would actually bring the korban Pesach. Now, these 2 cooked foods is zeicher lekorban Pesach, the zeicher lechagig. That means, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, we talked about this many times. On Erev Pesach, how many korbanos would you bring? On Erev Pesach, only 2. We didn't bring the Shamei Simcha on Erev Pesach. On Yom Tov, you bring 3. But on Erev Pesach, we bring 2. Chagiga and the Korban Pesach. Now we don't have either. So you have to bring 2 cooked foods. In fact, the Gemara discusses which cooked foods. You can bring cooked rice maybe or cooked egg. But we the mice have a minute to bring a cooked shank bone, whatever shank bone even means, and a cooked egg, roasted egg. So that's why we bring the 2 tafshim. Okay, it's interesting. We're up to Kufidad, very top of the page, 10 of the page. There's a Tesis toward the second to bottom Tesis, and give you tremendous amount of chizuk. Look at this Tesis of last week, it's always actually a bit ahead. Now give me a lot of chizuk. This year, Erev Pesach is a Shabbos. If Mashiach comes tomorrow, will we bring a chagiga? Does anybody know? On 14th of Pesach, will we bring a chagiga? No, don't bring it to the Shabbos before Shemishtah. Chagiga only comes b'chol not on Shabbos. So when you're sitting Seder night this year, are you going to have a roasted egg and a roasted bone, or are you going to bother?
You're saying you shouldn't.
Big problem. Why are you having both? You can't have both. Why? How can you have both? One for Zech Pesach, one for Chagiga. That's right. That's Mochim and Absochim, Ashagia. That's why, because it's got to do with don't bring Chagiga. But that's about these 2 things. So in fact, Tesis says better not, better don't, because if you're going to have 2 things, there's no Zechel Chagiga. We won't bring a Chagiga this year. There's no Chagiga. Says Tesis, but some people used to, even though it's better not, some people used to. Says Tesis, you do not need to tell. It's okay. It doesn't matter. So if you have today a roasted Pesach, you have a roasted bone. Fake Tesis says, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. Why does it matter? Can anybody tell me why it matters? Roasted bone and roasted egg on your cup. What will they forget? Very good. If you put a roasted egg on your plate this year, and Mashiach comes, what's going to happen is, Mashiach will come next year, and it could be the next year as well, Erev Pesach will be a Shabbos, and you'll think to yourself, should I be a Chagiga on Shabbos? And you'll think to yourself, what will I do? And what will you come to the conclusion? Yes, I do. Why will you come to the conclusion, yes, I do? Because last year was Pesach was a Shabbos, and now he took 2 cooked food. Says Tesis, you don't need to worry about it. Let's read the Tesis inside. I want to read Tesis inside. I want to read Tesis. Unbelievable with such chizuk. Second about Tesis, you only need 1 cooked food. Because come out, the people will stop them. ואין שום חשש אם אנו עושים, אף אחד לא יצטרך, תלך למיכה שמייבוא בביס המקדש. ויאמרו, and they'll say, אשתקד last year, זה נוסח לחגיגה בשבס, והשנה מנקווה בשבס, תעקוב המסור is reason. The Korban Pesach was given over to Kohanim, and Kohanim know the halachas. Furthermore, ukshibone, Moshe ve'Aaron yeimanu. We'll have Moshe and Aaron standing there. If you only want to use 1, you should do 1. So I was speaking to somebody. Moshe and Aaron going to be standing there. It's not such an easy, straightforward tesis, I have to tell you, because it's not all that clear that Moshe and Aaron will be there when Mashiach comes. Because there's a big machlokas where Tchias HaBeisim will occur, when Mashiach will become first. This is a mashmos of tesis. They say the famous stories I told you once about Chofetz Chaim, that he wanted to wear the choshen and the. If Moshe and Aaron are going to be there, they're not going to make the Chofetz Chaim the Kohen Gadol. It's not to make Aaron the Kohen Gadol. And the Moshe Feinstein was very worried about when they did an operation on him. Will he be part of the Sanhedrin? Because the halacha is to be on the Sanhedrin, you have to be you mustn't have a mum, you mustn't have a blemish. Moshe got tshuva, if you had the tooth pulled out, can you still sit on the Sanhedrin? Well, if you're going to have Moshe Rabbeinu there, they're not going to put Moshe Feinstein on the Sanhedrin. From this mashma, you don't need to worry. So I think it's somebody said to people, I have many Gemars that the Gemara does worry a bit. The Gemara does worry about Mashiach coming and people getting it wrong. It's a bit strange. But it says, so this Seder night, you can sit calmly. I have to point out, it's very, very important halacha. If you forget to do your roasted egg before Pesach, before Shabbos this year, when will you roast your egg? On Yom Tov. But if you roast it on Yom Tov, what's the halacha? You have to eat it on Yom Tov. Which means that the second night, you're going to have to roast another egg and another bone. Because you can't keep it for the next day, because you can't roast on first day to the second day. So you have to have 2 roasted bones. So you have to make sure to roast it before Shabbos. And you mustn't forget, what did I tell you, B'Shem Chayei Adam? You have to eat the bone on the second day. You did. I hope you did. What do you mean you didn't do it? Oh, very good. What? That's. Says the Gemara. Okay, we're going now to our Mishnah. The main halacha of our Mishnah is what? There's a mitzvah to do karpas. Now, our Mishnah is talking about which kind of karpas? Lettuce. Oba v'shlokish. This is a sichas kavana. You have to have kavana when you do a mitzvah. Why? You ate it when you weren't supposed to eat the mod because you ate it at the beginning of the meal by karpas. The burpi adama dochile. And you make a normal burpi adama without the bracha of Ashek Shalitzvah Valachilas Mod. That's why you have to eat it again. So you're going to eat mod twice, once by karpas, once by mod. Because if you hold mitzvah loy by kavana, if you hold the mitzvah still need kavana, that means if you do an act without kavana, it also works. Why do you have to do it twice? You've already done it once. So somebody who's only got moi should not bother with moi. You should just do it for karpas. You hear Moshe, let's say you can't afford to buy potatoes and lettuce. You just buy a bit of extra lettuce. Use it for karpas, and you're done. So why do you have to dip it again? But you can't make another bracha because we'll see. We'll come to it. Because when you so from here, the Ran has got a whole Shai Chai V'Kam, which we don't pass can like. Now, how much karpas do you eat? How much karpas do you eat? Says, what's going on? I don't understand. Says, I don't understand. If you're eating less than gazais of karpas, you're not yotzi your mo, because for more you eat a gazais. You hear the question?
So you should eat a gazais if you only got one.
No. Shlokish said, again, let's get clear. Shlokish said, you've eaten your mo already. What's the point of eating it again? Says, well, what do you mean, what's the point of eating it again? I'll tell you the point of eating it again, because the first way, says the Rabbi, you have to eat a gazais of karpas. We don't do that. That is a very, very interesting rosh. And if you looked very, very carefully at my sheet, I meant that rosh when I wrote it a tiny bit. The rosh says, whoever told you to eat a gazais some more? Why do we eat a gazais normally? Why do we eat a gazais some more? Why? Oh, more than that. Because whenever the Torah says you've got to eat, achila is bekazais. The Torah never uses the word achila by more, says the rosh. Says the Rosh, if that's the case, you do not need to have. You can have a mashu of more and it's good enough. And that's how I wrote that somebody who's really not well can be even more lenient to ask a rov. That if you're not well, just have a crumb of lettuce. And in fact, it's broad. Oh, very good. Shagis Aya asked the question. It's very good. Shagis Aya says it gets very upset. And in fact, this I saw it in at least 2 different forms. I can't explain it, but they write that Briskerov never ate more than a crumb of more. Because his father said to him, "You're weak, and since you're weak, then you should only eat a crumb of more." Very hard. Nah, I can't because they don't like it. I find it very hard. That I saw that you've got to look.
Weak from what? Was he weak?
I don't know. Was he? I never spoke to him. I don't know. I'm just saying to you, that's why I said, if you're very not well.
Don't fast either.
Yeah, don't fast. Yeah, also because the same cheshbon. But again, I know the very machmir are certain things. Let's get it very clear, slowly but surely. Karpas al minigas eat less than the kazais. There's a Ran, and not just the Ran. There are many others that say you should eat more than the kazais to try to move it from this gemara, otherwise I yotza. There's a Rosh who takes the opposite stand. And the Rosh says, I'll prove it to you that you didn't have a gazais for more. Now you should all tell me the proof, besides the fact that Torah doesn't say achila. Because this Gemara, the Rosh takes on that by karpas, you don't bother with the gazais. And the Gemara over here says that you're yotza, you're more with karpas. How can you be yotza? Is a way, you don't need to eat the gazais and more, says the Rosh. Now we don't pass like this Rosh because of the Shagas Aya and others. But the Maisa, the reason I mentioned it is, if the person's not well, then they should. I remember it was the first time I ever heard something. It was left. I was traveling on Friday, so a woman called him up, and she said that for her eating matzah and more is very, very, very difficult. And she started explaining why it was difficult. And to me, it did not sound difficult. And I tried to remember what it was. I know what it was. She was on a certain diet, which diabetes people. What's it called? But you don't eat carbohydrates. What's it called? Not keto. No, it's a different one. Well, you only need protein. Certain diet. What? Oh, that's the one. Atkinson's diet. That was the one she said. She was on Atkinson's diet. Protein only. Can you imagine? I thought it was left to get. What do you mean Atkinson's diet? So for one day a year, you'll get off it. He gave her the smallest shiurim you can possibly imagine.
Is that because she was on the milk as well?
No. There's no difference in the man and woman.
What did he say?
She was on Atkinson's diet. I remember very clearly. She was on Atkinson's diet. See, the smallest Yomi you could possibly imagine. I was very, very surprised. He's a very, very confident person.
Never explained.
No. He can explain. You can't rattle him. It's not like he's been involved for a long time.
That picture of him.
What?
Learning.
Yes, and the thing. Okay, so we've got. So I'm just saying to you, this is the code. This is. I wrote down that thing. If you ask, I bet probably the Russian. One other thing. There's another small. But Beis, again, there's only somebody who's not well. A person should be mitzvah in these things. A person who can't. Says the Gemara, Mimai, what's your proof? Dilma le'olam mitzvahs ein sichas kavanah, you don't kavanah. Going straight to le'olam keich dilavi aker le'tineikas. The reason you do it twice is because if you only do it once and you eat more in the beginning and that's it, the children will have no question to ask. If that's the case, Mishnah should only tell us about other vegetables. That's when you need to do it twice. You might have thought that if all you own is more, don't bother doing it twice. That means on the contrary, the Mishnah's take is an extra chiddush. That even if you've only got moroi, don't think if I've only got moroi, I shouldn't bother with karpas. No, dip it for karpas and then eat it again for moroi. We've got another raya. By the way, it's a very, very important because sugya, do mitzvah sichas kavanah, the halacha discusses it in halachas tefillin. Do mitzvah sichas kavanah, it's a very, very important halacha. Again, you can get OCD about these things. But Marshall, a lot of people, they say Shema, and they don't stop for a second before Shema to think to themselves, I'm about to make a mitzvah seder of saying Shema. Right? Always very interested by shofar. Everybody stands there, tense beyond belief, about to hear mitzvah shofar. The mitzvah Shema is twice a day. The same L'Shem Yichud that you say before Tkiyas Shofar, you should say before Shema. The point is, if you're on mitzvah sichas kavanah, then you mechuyev before you say Shema to stop for a second, or before by the end of Yomi. You should stop for a second, and then you should stop for a second. I'm about to make a mitzvah seder of remembering that Hashem took us out of time, or before you put in your sitters, before you do any mitzvah. Okay. The Ma'aseh, it's machlekes in the Shonim, machlekes in the Gemara, machlekes in the Achronim, do mitzvah sichas kavanah or not. The Halacha says that two things. It says by the Rabbanon can be make or by the Raisa should be machmir. Another thing he says, which is a big help, is that something which you're doing, which is extraordinary, which you not normally do, you don't need kavanah. Meaning that if, for example, you're doing something automatically, then you need kavanah. But let's say, for example, you blow shofar. See, then you don't need kavanah. Why don't you need kavanah? Because what are you doing? You're blowing shofar. You can't itself blowing shofar. You're picking up a minute. If you're doing something which is not an unusual act, then you need kavanah. But Beis and Mishnah still says, before every single mitzvah, you should have kavanah about the mitzvah. We've got Beis before, it's not like Rish Lakish. Tiny, we learned Ochlon Demai. What's Demai? Not sure if it was Yotza. Why Yotza? Why Yotza if you eat more Demai Yotza? Why? Because you could be mafki everything you have, and then you'd be an onion, and onion is allowed to eat Demai. Ochlon B'lim is Skaven. You eat it without any intention, Yotza. Ochlon Lachatzon Yotza. As long as you don't wait longer than K'te'achlas Pas. Tanoi says, well, it's machlokes the Tanya Beis same afisha tivul bechazeres. Even if you dipped with the chazeres, bits will have fun for chazeres v'charois shetavshin. That even if you did it once, you have to do it twice. Is a raya that the Gemara says that it's mitzvah sichas kavanah, because if it's in sichas kavanah, why do you have to do it twice? Says the Gemara, "Va'katim imai." You've got no raya from Rabbi at all. Dilma because some of Rabbi's mitzvah is in sichas kavanah. You don't need kavanah. The reason why you do it is only because it's hecker for the children. Says more, if that's the case, in Cain, my mitzvah, why do you call it a mitzvah? To heker the tinoikas can't be considered a mitzvah, it's only a minute, so it's a mitzvah. Last night, I spent some time with it. There's a famous Gaon, it's more than a few poskim, that there are 64 different mitzvahs that we do Seder night. 64 different mitzvahs. And he says 6 in an acre. So we tried very hard, I sat with a few people, trying to work out what are the 64 mitzvahs. And we started arguing which mitzvahs you count, right? You've got a mitzvah, for example, of Talmud Torah, because you do Psukim around Me'evidovi. Mitzvah Sifrit Mitzrayim. You've got the 4 cups of wine, which is more practices 4 mitzvahs. You've got 4 brachas on the wine. You don't do any melachas on Yom Tov. You've got mitzvah of eating matzah, and mitzvah of eating more. So you count, it gets, so you can go on, comes to 64.
What did you get to?
I got to 53. I stopped at 53. I couldn't get to 64. But I was interested if anybody knows the 64. I was curious. I looked up there. I couldn't find one. Anyway, but Ma'aseh Karpas is not one of them. Because even though it's that the bracha b'priyadama on the karpas is one of them, but the karpas itself is not mitzvah because it's only because it's no different from taking the ka'ah off the table or from doing anything that the children should ask questions. Okay. My state of shirin. What are the two cooked food? Omar Avuna silke v'avoisa, which is like kind of celery and rice. Rov Mahada silke and beets. Is that what it says? Beets. Oh, right. Silke is beets and rice. Rov Mahada silke v'avoisa. He would always makbid on the seder plate to put beets and rice. We probably do Avuna since Avuna mentioned it. Can you imagine your seder plate? Oh, very good, very good. We'll see. The mice an interesting thing. The Rava, there's no chumman having beets and rice. But since Rav Huna used it as an example, he preferred to use that as an example rather than to use something else, simply because Rav Huna used that as an example. Rav Huna was trying to say, if you look at Tesis, three words of Tesis, even Rav Huna agreed that meat is better. But since Rav Huna said rice and beets, therefore Rava looked to get what his Rebbe said, even though there's no halachic preference to it. He's not chish v'ich. The time has been talking to Rabbi holds that rice can become chometz. If you hold that rice can become chometz, you can't put cooked rice on your seder table. It was be chometz. Is a raya that Rabbi was not chish v'ich benoi. So it doesn't become chometz at all, and therefore it is okay. Even if you have a fried fish with egg, whenever you fry fish, many people dip the fish into egg and then you fry it. So how many cooked foods is that? Says Chizkiah, that's considered two. So if you can't afford to buy an egg and a shank bone, just take a piece of fish, dip it in egg, fry it, and then you've got two cooked foods. You've got a fish and you've got egg. You should have two kinds of meat. Even a bone and the gravy. That means, let's say you've got a bone with gravy, so the bone is one, and the gravy with it is the second. So we've got many different shittas. The Beis, our winning is to use an egg because egg is fluid. Be'er means to beg, that we beg HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring us back the Mashiach in order that we should be able to bring these kabbonis. Our winning is also that we roast it, we don't just cook it. Because we roast it, we don't eat it Seder night. I wanted to mention this. Because of the fact that we don't want to look, we don't eat anything roasted. Say, Pshita. If you got other vegetables, you eat it. And then later, when you come to the mavo, you make a and you eat it. That's what we do. If you only got lettuce, what should you do? How should you make the brachas? That means you take the moroi by the kalpas, you just make one bracha, you dip it and you eat it. When you get to actual moroi, and then you make an achilas moroi. Says after you filled yourself up with it, that means that you've had loads of moroi before by kalpas. You make another bracha. How can you possibly do? You've already made priyadama on this. You've already eaten it. Now you're going to say achilas more. Again, the shenim medayik lachashemilo kreisem, and you filled the stomach. If we eat less than the kazayis and kalpas, you've not really filled your stomach with it. Okay. You say adama and moi. Then eventually the moi without any bracha at all. The Surya of the Kavodah of Sheshes with Avishah with Kav Chista, Velchasa Kavosida of Chista. The Loch is like of Chista. That if a person only has Mooi, he makes both brachas by Kalpas, and when he comes to Mooi, he doesn't bother making any brachas at all. Vachvid Avov and Mahada Shayavokis would look for other vegetables, Fukadav Shemei Plugta, to stop himself from getting into Machlikas. Okay, there's a very lot to talk about this stuff. We did, I think, the highlights at least. The biggest highlights is the fact that we have Moshe and Aaron standing there telling us what to do. And I'm going to do a little bit of weighing. It is really not, it's just for the curiosity of it all. No reason to stay at all, just have to quicker forward. With Shabbat tomorrow, we're starting from Omer Avida. I'd like to point out the next Motzei Shabbos, the Daf Shiur will be 8:30. I'd like to thank Sholem for bringing his mat. And I brought the scales, and we're going to have a contest. Who is more accurate, scales or the mat? And after. Okay, so I bought machine matzahs, which are not so good. Not the same.
Everyone sells Korean. I've tried everyone. I've tried about 4 different people. All sold out.
What? What's completely gone?
We've got to box.
Right, very, very quick. Let's try to do it as fast as possible. Right. Sean, bring your mat. Tell me, is this a good size?
No, you want any brown ones?
I don't. That's right.
Yeah, correct.
On YouTube. You have the.
It's not working. Your battery ran out.
The battery is running low. Wait a second. Hey, look, you want to see how much this weighs? A plastic cup weighs 2.5 grams. Right.
Okay.
So,
Put on mute.
2.5. Right, I've told you it's right. Now let's see this matzah. This matzah weighs 21 grams. Just on 21, exactly 21 grams. I'm just curious to see another matzah.
The difference between each.
Can't eat these anymore, can we?
Yeah.
Not so big.
Sorry, yeah.
This is 20. This is 20. That 20. Exactly 20. No, it's either 20.9 or 21.
What was
Now,
the first one?
21.
Right, how many grams according to your sheet?
Now wait a second.
Yeah, but
Where's the
these are fine
sheet?
too.
No, the sheet first.
Wait a second. Okay, do you want to make? Do you want to put the tissue over your sheet?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
take the weight. Take the weight of the box and divide it by
14 pieces, 21.4 grams.
14 pieces.
No,
How
no,
much?
no, 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 no.
300 grams divided by
Yeah, you
14.
don't know if it's accurate.
Is a 14?
Weigh the
Is a
actual box.
14?
That's 14 and 7 and weigh the actual box.
And how much grams does it say the box is?
It says 300 grams.
on the box.
And 300 divided by
That's
21.
300 divided by 14 pieces is 21 grams.
Exactly
I gave
21.
them to him.
Ah, so it's 0.4 gram difference.
Says, yeah.
I can print it again. I'll email you. I'll
It's
email
the other
you.
way around.
I know. Okay. Wait a second. Which one is? It's the wrong way around. You have to do it over first one. So
No, it's right.
no,
Yeah,
right.
now
ah.
it is.
No, it's
Now for
Matzah's
Nice present, Sean.
right. So this, according to this,
accurate. We know.
3/4 or 2/3. It's more. What do you say? So let's.
That's 21 grams.
Pesach matzah.
Let's just-
Isn't it?
let's
How many
just
grams
do-
do you need?
What's a hand-baked?
How many
Hand-baked
grams?
anyway.
Right, that would
One
be
and a half of goosebumps.
that would be the right amount, right? Would you say?
According to them.
According to this, it's enough for matzah.
According to you.
Let's just see.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Moment of
Here
truth.
you go.
We've got
No,
How
no,
many?
no.
How much does it have to
Wait a
weigh?
second.
29 grams.
Oh, do we need 29?
According to Mishnah.
Ah.
Ish. Give or take.
Yeah.
Let's see, go on.
Not gonna be
That
28.
28.
28.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
have you
Now,
got a
wait
little
a
gap
second.
there? A little gap there.
Yes, you had a bit
A
of a
little
gap
gap
there.
there.
Mount
Yeah.
Mishnah says it's 27.
27. There you go. It's too much.
No, it's not. It's
Not
very,
too
very
much.
close. That's very,
Very
very
close.
good.
Alright,
That's
keep
very,
on.
very
Yeah,
good.
it's bang
Wait a
on.
second. Those who want to
But that's
fulfill,
everything that-
You have that two gazesim, no?
those who want to fulfill their opinion in the best possible manner should have 53. So
Two gazesim
53
you have to have,
is
no?
double this.
Hand-baked.
It is
Hand-baked.
having
Hand-baked.
what?
Hand-baked's gonna weigh different.
We don't
I
do
know,
what
I know.
hand baked.
Tomorrow now, I'll have hand
Now-
baked.
Well, I did some last year. This
Two
is
and a
last
half
year.
hours.
Now, somebody who's not well, somebody, let's just see.
You know that two
yeah.
gazesim? You have to have two gazesim,
What?
no? You have to have two gazesim, no?
For what?
Pyrite, you wanna do
Most
pyrite?
matzahs have two
No,
gazesim.
that's considered two matzahs. That is two. That's right.
That's two gazesim.
That's two kazesim,
It
yes.
doesn't tell you times two on here.
No, because
That's
that's
two kazesim.
is already two
That's very two
kazesim.
gazesim. This
So
is
it's
two
actually
gazesim.
quite good. Let's just see again.
So it comes out
27.9, arrow 27, according to Mishnah Berurah. So it's very, very good. It's very good. It's not
Yeah.
that far.
That's assuming
But
that
they're
you
not
know
as-
that.
It
depends on the
Yes.
thickness. It depends on
How
the
many
thickness.
matzahs?
The juice and matzahs are thicker.
Much to get. Anyone's got any other matzahs in the no more matzahs.
Come on, Shiur. Right, head of catering.
Now let's just see. Wait a second.
Yeah, you want
I want to get now to 9 grams for somebody who's struggling. So I said that's 20.
Briscoe,
This, how much
Briscoe.
is this?
It'll be nothing. Yeah, right. British have no more.
Yeah. No more.
That's 7.
Very good.
So this is what we do. Say
What's this for?
that's too much.
No.
Answered you a long time ago.
We haven't put your name down.
I'm responding. I need to respond.
I won't come.
We don't want you.
It's too much. But this would be approximately. This is very little. But this is somebody who's really not well. He's allowed to have this. But
Right.
it's very,
That's the
very
minimum
small.
share.
No, that's for somebody not well. Now let's just see.
You can see on here. See on here,
53
this.
will be very
So
easy.
see me, this.
No, this won't show.
No,
That's just
maybe
the colour.
that line, maybe it would be that line.
Kirch, what's Kirch? What's that
Here,
showing?
that's
Kirch
Kirch.
matzah or Kirch lettuce?
Matzah.
Correct. Left area until
This is-
dotted
this whole
line.
thing is
This
matzah.
no, this is correct. This is
Kirch of the
correct.
matzah or Kirch of the
Doesn't say.
lettuce?
No,
I want to see now. 13 is 3/4 of a matzah.
Saying
That's
Mora
quite
is all
good.
this. Have you heard of?
Yeah,
Have you heard of? Mora is all this according to him.
But if you come on,
The leaves is this whole thing.
Leave the whole thing.
nah,
The
that's what it
leaves,
says.
leaves the whole
Area
thing.
enclosed by thick
Yeah, I
bubble
said to
border.
the
You did
lettuce.
say, you
The
said it's
lettuce
about
is
2
well out.
romaine. It's about that.
Yeah, wait a second. Okay, so this is
No,
very
wait,
bad.
lettuce,
So this
Ollie,
is
wait, lettuce.
the problem is this
Wait,
is
bring
very uniform. So you don't really see it. What we need to do is get a hand matzah, which is
lots of hand mats where
Where-
everyone's set different thickness.
that's
and
right. The
different-
thing is that to get a better
The comb
idea.
is usually the
For
same.
me, it's usually the same.
The amazing thing is,
Yeah, go.
Ben,
Okay,
how
okay.
much did you know there's 12? Always give out hand mats. Go to university.
Well,
but
12
it's
kilo,
fine,
yeah,
because once
12
it
kilo,
gets
great.
broken,
They're not uniform. It's not machine.
Okay, so you work out.
Yeah,
The bad are very.
Ben, I'm going to uni.
Very good. Every good chodesh, good vach, atzlach, and everything. Shkech,
No problem, no
Shalom.
problem.
Yeah, that's-
How much we need?